Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Market Snapshot series. My name is Rufus Kamau, Market Analyst at FX Pesa. So today we'll be talking about the key market events that are currently impacting various asset classes. We'll be looking at the economic calendar to try and understand the top market events for today. Then after that, we'll be looking at key chart patterns for major currency pairs, commodities, as well as stock market indices, to try and understand where the prices might be headed next. So as usual, I will begin with a disclaimer that this session is not investment advice. It is not a recommendation to trade, so you should always do your own analysis and practice proper risk management. So let's get started by focusing on what happened in the markets yesterday. So yesterday we had the FOMC press conference as well as the Fed interest rate decision, where the Federal Reserve Bank of the US decided that it's going to cut interest rates by 50 basis points. So that was the biggest decision in a while, and that led to extreme volatility for all US dollar pairs, gold, as well as US equity indices. So from the decision, it was pretty straightforward. So I'm going to go through it. So the Federal Reserve Bank of the US cut the target range for the Fed funds rate by a jumbo 50 basis points to 4.75% to 5% range in September 2024. The first reduction in borrowing costs since March 2020, and this was when we had COVID. So the decision to cut rates was anticipated. There was speculation about whether the central bank would choose a more conservative 25 basis points reduction instead. The central bank also released new economic forecasts. Policymakers are penciling in 100 basis points of easing by year end, suggesting two more 25 basis points cuts this year. For 2025, an additional percentage point of cuts were expected, followed by a final 50 basis points reduction in 2026. Also, the PCE, or the personal consumption expenditures inflation, was revised lower for 2024 to 2.3% versus 2.6% in the June projection, and 2025 to 2.1%, down from the expected 2.3%. The core inflation is also seen lower at 2.6% for 2024, down from the previous projection of 2.8%, and 2.2% for 2025, down from the previous projection of 2.3%. US GDP growth is seen slightly down at 2% versus the previous expectation of 2.1%, but the forecast for 2025 was kept at 2%. Meanwhile, the unemployment rate is seen higher this year at 4.4% versus the previous projection of 4%, and for next year, it's seen to remain steady at 4.4% versus the previous projection of 4.2%. So as you can see with interest rates, we had seen this gradual rise. I believe this was the fastest rate hike in the US ever. But then after rates got to 5.5% in July last year, they remained there for some good time. And now we had one big rate cut of 50 basis points, dropping back to 4.75%. So this big rate cut led to extreme volatility, especially in gold. So we'll be looking at the charts to try and understand how that is impacting the markets. So besides that, today, fast forward, we focus on yet another central bank that is expected to make an interest rate decision today at 2 p.m., and that's the Bank of England. So the Bank of England is expected to hold interest rate steady at 5.0% on the decision later this afternoon. So the key change that we will be observing is the number of votes by the Monetary Policy Committee members. So in the previous voting, there were 5 members that were voting for a rate cut, and 4 members were voting for holding interest rate steady. So in this case, the majority led to the 25 basis point rate cut that we saw in the previous time. So now we are expecting a big shift where 7 members are expected to vote for holding interest rates steady at the current level, and only 2 members are expected to be voting for a rate cut, while 0 represents the number of the number of Monetary Policy Committee or MPC members that are expected to be voting for a rate hike. So if this so happens to be the case, then the UK will have one of the highest interest rates among the top global economies, only second to the Reserve Bank of New Zealand, that is still holding rates high at 5.25%. So what this means, having one of the highest interest rates in the world, this should attract investments in UK gilts or UK treasuries, and this could lead to a strengthening of the pound against other currencies. And now, when you look at the divergence between the Bank of England and other central banks around the world, then you realize that we could be seeing some further upside in pound USD pair, as well as pound against other currencies where the central bank are aggressively cutting interest rates. So earlier this morning, we had two data points coming in. One was GDP quarter over quarter for New Zealand, which came in at negative 0.2%, meaning that the economy is weakening further. But then this was better than the expected negative 0.4%, although it was still a drop from the downwardly revised previous performance of 0.2%, which was revised downwards to 0.1%. So as for employment change in Australia, we saw a big uptick in the number of new jobs created in August at 47.5k jobs. This was almost double the previous reading of the forecast of 26.4k jobs, and of course slightly below the July's number of jobs created, which was 48.9k, which was revised downwards from the previous reading of 58.2k jobs. So this led to quite a big reversal, especially after the announcement that we saw yesterday. So we are seeing both the New Zealand dollar and the Australian dollar regaining their strength against the US dollar, which weakened yesterday after the news announcement by the Fed to cut rates by 50 basis points. So going forward for the rest of the day, we'll also be looking at the weekly unemployment claims from the US at 3:30 p.m. We'll be looking at the Philadelphia Fed Manufacturing Index as well as the current account, which basically represents the difference between exports and imports in the US. These will all be released by 3:30 p.m. So that's the news expectations for the day. And now I believe we can check a couple of highlights on how the markets performed yesterday. So one, the US dollar remained one of the weakest currencies in the market, with other currencies making a big gain against the dollar, with the Australian dollar and the New Zealand dollar being the biggest gainers for the day. So the Canadian dollar is also doing pretty good, as well as the pound and the euro against the US dollar, whereas the Japanese yen and the Swiss franc have lost slightly to the dollar. So as per the stock market, what we saw was a big sell-off after the initial spike upwards. So we saw the Fed announcing the decision on interest rates. Stocks jumped higher, but then later on they erased gains and closed at a lower side, and this led to the big sell-off. And you can see most of the stock market was in the red yesterday. However, looking at the markets today, we are seeing a lot of optimism and major reversals happening. And if you look at the top US equity indices, they are on a course for a major reversal. So as for the CME Fed Funds futures, yesterday we got a surprise 50 basis point cut. And now the forecast is on the next FOMC meeting, which comes in 49 days, 9 hours from now. And that should be on the 7th of November. That's 2 days after the US elections, which are set for November 5. So already the market is pricing in 63.1% probability that the Fed will be cutting interest rates further by 25 basis points. And also there's a potential for 50 basis points cut with 36.9% probability. So that being said, I believe it's time we jump straight into some of the potential movements that might be happening today. So let's do some technical analysis and try to understand where things might be headed next. So hello, Zakaria, and thank you for joining the session. Hello, Thomas Mashuma, thank you for joining. You can see Robert Kovale in the house, thank you for joining. Lucy Njoki, good morning. There's a request to Zoom, so apologies for that. I'll be Zooming more so that the presentation is more visible. Trinidad, thank you for joining. So a nice comment from Raymond. The burden of proof has been placed on incoming data, just as Powell said. If the labor market deteriorates, they will cut more. If inflation picks up, they will hold until it dissipates. So from what we have seen with the data, there has been a trend of downward revisions on jobs numbers, and this has accumulated to way over 800,000 jobs in downwards revisions, basically implying that the job market is currently very weak in the US, and this is the main reason that we are seeing the Fed being aggressive with rate cuts. So if the job market was stable and the Fed had achieved its inflation target, then in that case we could be looking at 25 basis point cut. But now it's a two-pronged problem where, yes, inflation has confidently moved towards the 2% target, but then on the other hand, the unemployment rate is rising and the number of new jobs created are not strong enough. So good morning, Joseph Gisharu. Thank you for joining. All Sports TV, good morning. Noniza Jack, good morning. So also another comment from Raymond. Thank you for the response here. So for more info on Bank of England's decision today, check our analysis for more insights. So adjusting the screen. Thank you guys for your response. So also there's a good request from Emmanuel to check on Canadian dollar trading against the Japanese yen. So let's get on with it. Try and understand what's happening on the charts. I believe that's the most important thing for the day. So from what we saw yesterday, I'll be starting with the dollar index. So immediately after the announcement of the 50 basis point cut, we saw this kind of movement here where the dollar index jumped all the way down to a level that we hadn't seen before, that is below 100. So this is 99.843. So after the dollar index got to this level, there was an immediate jump and it went all the way up. And from the price action we are seeing today is the dollar index now resuming and moving back towards yesterday's low. So this kind of reversal is happening across board, with the most interesting chart of the day being the chart of gold. So yesterday, after the announcement, gold rallied higher, forming a new all-time high of $2,600 per ounce. Then after that, there was a big move downwards all the way down to around 25.47. This was the lowest price we got. And then this morning, we have seen buyers coming in and pushing prices back up. And now we are on course to retest yesterday's high. So it's more likely than not that we will see gold continuing to rally and retesting yesterday's high of around $2,600 per ounce. So the same case is happening across board. If you look at Euro USD, there was a big jump upwards, a pullback, and now it's regaining the bullish momentum. So I expect this to continue. The 50 basis point cut was not a joke. So we continue seeing the dollar being weak against other currencies. And of course, the euro is leading in this course. So as for today's favorite, which will be the pound USD, made a big jump yesterday, pulled back downwards, and is now continuing. So if we happen to see a confirmation of the same, that the Bank of England is not cutting interest rates, then the expectation is at least we retest yesterday's high. And once we get to this level, make a potential rally. And we could be seeing over the next course of a couple of weeks, prices heading higher and potentially touching on the highest price that we saw in 2021. So a potential rally from here over the last quarter of this year could potentially push the pound USD to 1.42349. However, for today's price action, I expect at least a retest of 1.32977 with a potential for a breakout and an extension above that area. So for Audi USD, we have seen a very strong rally resulting from this morning's news, and the market has already hit the target of the previous resistance as well as yesterday's high. So this was yesterday's high. The market already recovered that, got to this particular resistance area, and now might potentially break and moved even higher if we continue seeing some weakness in the dollar, with the next level being around 0.68712. So as for USDN, we saw a big drop and then a rally and a pullback. But now it seems like the yen is quite weak in the market right now, and the dollar is taking advantage of that and attempting to move higher. But also it's important to know that tomorrow, being the Friday, the 20th of September, we could be seeing another rate hike by the Bank of Japan, or maybe possibly they hold rates at the current level. So from the interest rate decision by the Bank of Japan, that's when we'll be getting the major trend or direction of the yen. So for now, it doesn't seem at all a favorite pair to be looking at, but from tomorrow it might be the favorite. So today's forecast is better if you just put it on pound USD, where we already know that one currency is weak after the 50 basis point cut. And now if the Bank of England decides to hold interest rate steady at 5%, then in that case, we could be seeing an extension of the rally higher. So as for gold, we already discussed this. So the other asset I want us to look at is Bitcoin, which made a very strong and impressive rally from an area we had not broken before in a while. So remember, the last time we saw Bitcoin at these levels was all the way back in August 27th. So we had a big dip, and now we had a big break happening here. So with the market making a strong rally and eventually hitting $62,000 per Bitcoin. So after that, we saw the market cooling off this morning. So notice how during the Asian session, there was a big rally in Bitcoin, and since then, market has been moving sideways. So if you go to a smaller time frame, such as the 5-minute chart, then you can see that after the big move this morning, it's more or less like the market is trading sideways as we enter the London session. So any form of break, especially towards the upper side, might be taken as a bullish signal. So if you see buyers coming in Bitcoin and breaking above this area here, then that could be a potential trade to enjoy the rally as the market moves higher. So on the other hand, if you look at New Zealand USD, which had a very important update earlier this morning, it has made an impressive recovery and is bound to retest yesterday's high, similar to our USD. So the targets remain the same for intraday trading, getting back to yesterday's high of 0.62671. So as for USD CAD, what we are seeing here is the dollar gaining yesterday in the afternoon and early this morning, but then immediately making a reversal, and now we have a breakout towards the lower side, which implies that the market could now be headed for reversal. So after this strong rally that lasted the last 2.5 weeks, now we are seeing the market making a very strong and important reversal, which implies that we could be seeing prices heading back lower to around 1.35 price action level. So looking at other asset classes, especially the US equity indices, we are seeing major breakouts happening. So notice how the Nasdaq made a big rally yesterday. This was the rally during the news, and then pulled back all the way down. And then from this morning's price action, we have seen quite an impressive rally, already breaking the high of the week and moving even higher. So we had a major resistance area around this area here. It has already been broken, which means that our next target level for the Nasdaq 100 index is around 19,949. So I expect the bullish momentum or the bullish trajectory to continue through the day. So as for the US 30, it's a similar thing. We had a pullback. Notice how the market made a big spike, pulled back downwards, and now it's pushing back to the same level. So yesterday was a new all-time high for the Dow Jones. So now I expect the market to continue extending the rally and at least get to 41,993, which was the same high that we saw yesterday. So as for the Russell 2000, it's currently experiencing a very strong bullish momentum. We are almost eclipsing yesterday's high. So now the next probable level remains all the way up towards a level that we last saw around the 29th of July. So there's still more room for upside for the Russell 2000. So if you're looking for potential bullish positions, that might be one of the things to consider today. So for SP 500, let me try and load the chart. We are seeing a similar kind of price action. So from the daily time frame, this is how it looks like. So we saw a new all-time high yesterday. So after the market rejected that high price and pulled back downwards, today we have seen the market recovering and getting back to the previous high. So from that price level, we don't have any candlesticks on the left. So it means that we now start looking forward to new all-time highs being formed on the SP 500. So potentially forming a new leg towards the upper side. So as for other currency pairs that you guys may have requested, I'll be checking on the comment section to go through each one of them. So there's comments on checking on CAD JPY and Audi JPY. So for both of them, as I mentioned, tomorrow we'll be looking at an interest rate decision by the Bank of Japan. So I don't know why you are really focusing on this, because the volatility will mostly be coming in tomorrow. So focusing purely on these pairs that involve the JPY might not be the best idea for today. So for instance, with Audi JPY, from what I'm seeing here is some strong momentum as the yen remains weak in the market. So from the daily time frame, there seems to have been a big move earlier this morning as the market continues moving higher. So it's more of a reversal and major trend lines being broken. So notice how this area was broken this morning. Market broke, pulled back, and formed some form of continuation pattern here. So we don't have levels yet to identify as the major resistance areas, but then we could be seeing a calm before tomorrow's storm. So I wouldn't be overly optimistic about trading these pairs. However, if you look at CAD JPY, it's also a similar thing. A market that was strongly bearish are now making an impressive recovery. So notice how we had this momentum downwards. Market completing the cycle, pulling back and now retesting the same resistance. So we don't know whether you'll be having a break or some form of sideways momentum as the market anticipates the Bank of Japan decision tomorrow. So if I'm looking for some good assets to trade, perhaps look at the reversals that are happening as a result of yesterday's price action. Maybe there will be better opportunities there compared to the yen pairs. So European equity indices have also taken a positive stand following yesterday's price action. So there seems to be some positive correlation between European equity indices as well as US equity indices. So the bullish momentum continues for all of them, ranging from the German DAX, the Spanish IBEX, the Euro stocks, as well as the French 40 stock market index. So silver has made a complete recovery from yesterday's sell-off. So it formed a new high here of around $31. So pulled all the way back down and has now recovered completely and gotten back to the previous level, which implies that the buyers or the bulls are still in control and there could be some room for further upside, perhaps to around $31.5 price level. So to summarize, it seems likely that our best trade of the day might as well be in gold. So gold, even though right now it seems to be pulling back downwards, the recovery has been impressive, and there is a couple of factors that are fueling the rally in gold. So on one side, yields on bond holdings are going down as major central banks cut interest rates, making the bonds undesirable, and investors are now rotating to gold, which is up about 26% since the year started. So this bullish momentum is expected to continue, even though we are seeing these pullbacks happening every now and then. The overall trend is expected to be bullish for the day. So far we have seen some good momentum. I expect this to continue through the New York session. So on the other hand, US equity indices are taking the interest rate decision quite positively. So with the Nasdaq breaking above this area here, I expect some further continuation. So as we get into the New York session, we could be seeing the Nasdaq extending the rally to 19,949. So as for currencies, I would be more focused on pound USD, where if the Bank of England decides to hold interest rates steady at current level of 5%, then an extension of this rally to yesterday's high and above could be in play, and this is as soon as 2 p.m. this afternoon. So that's it for the day. Thank you very much, guys. What time will be the Bank of Japan be making its announcement tomorrow? So if you're using the calendar from Forex Factory, sometimes you will see it as tentative, but if you want a more accurate calendar, I advise that you use the trading economics calendar. It tends to have more accurate representations of time. So let's go to this. So the Bank of Japan rate decision will be happening tomorrow. So I'm trying to find it here. So inflation. Yes, so the interest rate decision will be exactly at 7 a.m. So make sure you bookmark the time at 7 a.m. We should be seeing some good volatility coming in from JPY pairs. So also the Chinese People's Bank of China will also be making an interest rate decision at 4:15 a.m. for both the 1-year loan prime rate and the 5-year loan prime rate at 4:15 a.m. So we don't expect much of a change. So 3.35% and 3.85% are expected to be maintained, though there is expectations of a potential quantitative easing program to support the Chinese economy. So as for the Bank of Japan, we expect the rate to be maintained at 0.25%, but given the way we have seen changes in monetary policy, a surprise rate hike from the Bank of Japan could be in the play. This could cause some good volatility in the market. So as I mentioned, for all the yen pairs, I don't think there's some very good opportunities, especially considering that there will be a rate decision tomorrow. So if you get stuck in such a trade, it might be difficult to get out ahead of the next news that might be happening tomorrow. So also, there's one last request to check on Euro Pound. So I'll be doing that as we approach the end. So as for Euro Pound, you can see it's quite a noisy chart. It doesn't have much of a single directional movements. So it's a very noisy chart going up and down, up and down. So from the daily time frame, this is how it looks like. So more likely than not, we could be seeing this chart extending the decline from yesterday. So in this case, there's still more room for support to be tested all the way down. So if we happen to see the Bank of England holding rates, then that should strengthen the pound against the euro, and potentially we could be seeing a retest of the 0.83844 price level. So thank you very much, guys. If you're watching this on YouTube, remember to like and share and subscribe to the channel. If you're watching this on X, remember to like and share the video so that we can get the information across more traders. And of course, if you are just beginning your trading journey, make sure to check the links in the description below. Register for a trading account. And if you are looking to learn how to trade, visit the FX Pesa YouTube channel and look for the Novice to Pro course, which is available free of charge to help you accelerate your learning and become a pro-level trader. So thank you very much, guys. Thank you for your time. I hope to see you on the next session.